Hey, what's going on, Ninth Age? This is Obsidian and Anubis, and I'm back with another Ninth Age battle report. And this time I have Game 2 of the Peter Whitestone, or EoS, versus the Sister of the Blood Moon cult, aka Dread Elves. So if you haven't seen Game 1, go back and watch Game 1. It was battle report 41, I believe. Two more in front of this one, because this is 43. So let's go and jump into the encounter. So this was encounter 2, surprise encounter at dawn. So the Empire had 4,500 points, and they were the defender, the attacker were the Dread Elves, and they had 4,500 points. There was a typical frontline clash, and how we did this is we did both opponents deployed their entire armies first, or at the same time, but we had a barrier in between, so we couldn't see how our opponent was deploying. And then after both of us deployed our armies, we moved the centerpiece so we could see each other's armies. So the narrative that went along with this one, so if you guys want to pause and read this, you're more than welcome to. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis. So basically, Peter Whitestone has moved inland, has camped, and is getting ready to continue moving into the area of the cult of the Blood Moon. On the other hand, we now see the first characters of the Blood Moon tribe. They are there's Desiree and Laura. And they're the two faction leaders for this army. And then they talk about how they're going to attack and stop the invaders. So let's go and look at Peter Whitestone's army. So on the far left, I have 5 readers with brace pistols and heavy armor. Next to them, I have 10 militia with bows and skirmishing. Next to them, I have 15 light infantry with the marksman banner. Behind them, I have a mortar. And then in the center of my line, I have 45 heavy infantry with halberds, full command, and the unity banner. And with them is a character who I forgot to notice, but with them is my BSB, who I don't think was anything special. On top of the hill, I have a volley gun, and then to the right of that, I have 11 knightly order with the household standard, which basically gives the Peter Whitestone, the general, a 18-inch bubble for both leadership and orders. They have cavalry hammers, full command. And on the right, I have 25 Imperial Guard with the flaming banner. And then next to that, I have 15 more light infantry with crossbows, and with them is the marksman banner. And they also have John the Wild, who is a wizard master of alchemy. He was also a real live wizard, in kind of chemist, alchemist. That if you've never heard of him, you should look him up. And then to the far right, I have 5 more readers with brace pistols and heavy armor. So that is Peter Whitestone's force. So let's go and look at the Dread Moon Sisters. So on the far left are 5 Dark Raiders with repeater hand crossbows. And then a block of, looks like 8 Dread Knights with full command. And to the right of them is 15 Dread Auxiliaries with musician. And behind them is my opponent's general, Princess on a mana core. It's the Raging Heroes mana core model. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. It's not finished in this picture, but it is now complete minus the base, so it looks pretty cool. In the woods are 25 Dread Legionnaires with full command, and then to the right is another block of 15 Dread Auxiliaries with musician, and with them is an Oracle, Oracle Adept of Divination. To the right is my opponent's new favorite list, or unit in the list, 25 Dancers of Yema with a Priestess who's the BSB, and on the far right, 5 more Dread Reapers with repeater crossbows, and then a Hydra hiding there in the back. So this is what the battlefield looked like with both armies deployed. For the secondary objective, it was just basically cause as much damage as you could. So there was no secondary objective per se for this one. It was just based on victory points. So Peter Whitestone managed to get the first turn, and so I moved up, as you can see here. So this is, I think, after Vanguard. No, this is my first turn movement. So you can see my right lines kind of moved up a little bit. My left lines, because I outdistanced my opponent for most of my shooting, I decided to kind of keep my left flank back a little bit more. In Magic, I got flex card number 1, so I had 5 dice to their 4 dice. And I managed to get Glory for gold off on, I think, my crossbow unit, because they were the only ones in range. And they picked off a few Reaper Auxiliaries, but nothing much. So that brings us to Daughters of the Blood Moon cult, turn 1. Um, so in turn one, my pistoliers my raiders on the left flank managed to shoot off the Dread Reapers, or Dread Reapers, the Reaper Auxiliaries, whatever they're called, the cavalry models. I think I shot off like 3 of them and they failed the panic and ran off the board. So you can see my opponent moved up rather aggressively with the Cold One Riders, or the Raptor Riders, excuse me. Moved the Spearmen out of the woods and then moved up the right flank quite a bit, trying to get the Hydra out from behind the back. In Magic Phase, my opponent also got Flex card number 1, and so also had 5 dice to 4 dice. I don't have any pictures of Magic. I don't know if my opponent only had 2 spells: the Dread Elf Heredity spell and the level 1 from Divination. So it was usually I'd stop the Dread Elf Heredity spell, and my opponent would get off the Divination first spell. In shooting, my opponent managed to kill 2 of my readers, but I managed to pass my break test, or panic test. And that brings us to Peter Whitestone, turn 2. Alright, so in shooting, my opponent did manage to kill off 2 of my knights. I declared a charge with both the knights and the Imperial Guard into the Dancers of Yima. My general had the Courier's Pennant, or whatever it is that lets you reroll filled charges, so it's a one-use only item, so I thought I'd go ahead and give that a try. And unfortunately, only my knights made it in the combat, and my Imperial Guard did not. You can see that also I originally charged the my opponent's light cav with my Imperial Guard, and they fled, and then I charged the same unit with my readers and managed to catch them and destroy them. Over here on the left side, yeah, once more, I just kind of moved my readers up to just kind of start taking pot shots at the Dread Reaper, the Dread Legionnaires, Dread, whatever the cavalry are. But other than that, I didn't really move up my lines. I just kind of steadied and basically just tried to shoot as many as I could before they could get to me. In Magic Phase, I got Flex card number 5, so I had looks like about 8 Magic dice to my opponent's 5. I managed to get both the Glory for Gold off and the Word of Iron off on my knights, since they had the cavalry hammers. They had a 2-up armor save, but now they have a 1-up armor save. I also made my opponent flammable because of this, so that was helpful. In shooting, my mortar did pretty well and managed to kill off, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or so of my opponent's Dread Reapers. On the left flank, unfortunately, between my handgunmen and my readers, I only managed to kill, I think, 1 or 2 of the Dread Cavalry, the Cold One Riders, Raptor Riders. So that wasn't as good as I had liked. In close combat over here, my opponent only managed to kill 2 of my guys, and I managed to kill 4 of my opponent. I was hoping for more, but I guess I shouldn't be too unhappy that I only lost 2. So that brings us to Daughters of the Blood Moon Tribe Cult, turn 2. So my opponent charged in the Raptor Riders into my Halberdiers, so it looks like I managed to kill off 3 between the Volley Gun, the Halberdiers, and, the Handgunners and the Readers. And so I just stood and took that shot. My opponent also declared a long charge of the Dread Legionnaires into the flank of my Imperial Guard, and made that. Yeah, I don't know what this picture is showing. You can see my opponent also kind of moved up the Hydra to flank my knights, and moved up the Repeater Auxiliary to get a better view and come in range of some of my stuff. This is just another picture showing that. In Magic Phase, my opponent managed to get Know Thy Enemy off on the Dancers. And then in close combat this time, I lost 4 knights, and only managed to kill, looks like only 1 of the Dancers. So that really went poorly for me. My unit broke, and my opponent chased me, but did not manage to catch me, so that's a good thing. And then in close combat down here with the Dread Legionnaires, my opponent managed to kill 6 of my Imperial Guard. I killed 2 in return. Luckily, I had a Priest, so my unit was steadfast. However, I rolled like an 11, and my BSB was nowhere near, so I broke, but I did manage to get it away by about 2 inches. So some good news, but this was definitely not the best turn for the Empire. Over here on the left side, my opponent came in and looks like killed about 6 of my halberdiers. I killed 2 of my opponent in return, and I believe I won just due to ranks, but my opponent instead held. So that brings us to Peter Whitestone turn 3. So this is what the battlefield looks like overall. You can see I charged the handgun light infantry into the flank of the Raptor Riders just to get some combat res. I also managed to rally both my General and my Imperial Guard, so that's good. In Magic phase, I managed to get Flux card number 7, so I had a total of, I think, 9 to my opponent's 6 dice. I managed to get Molten Copper off on the Dancers of Yema and killed a handful of those, and I don't know if I got anything else off. So here's what it looks like after combat. It looks like I managed to kill 1 more Raptor Rider and lost a few more Halberdiers in return. I won this combat by quite a few, but my opponent rolled really low and stuck. And that brings us to Daughters of the Blood Moon Tribe Cult, turn 3. So my opponent charged the Dancers of Yema into Peter Whitestone and his knights. It was a pretty reasonable charge for my opponent, so I declared flee, hoping that I would roll low and remain on the board, but I didn't. I rolled high, so Peter Whitestone has fled the battlefield, so my general is no more. You can see my opponent also charged the Dread Legionnaires into my Imperial Guard, who once more held, and hopefully will do a better time, would do better this time than they did last time. Yeah, other than that, my opponent kind of moved up the repeaters. They don't have a whole lot going on. The Hydra is just kind of slowly moving up. Unfortunately, my opponent kind of got the Hydra. First, it kind of got stuck in the back, and then every time it was about to charge something, my army broke, so it didn't get a chance to really do anything. So my opponent actually just kind of moved it to the right over here, where I can maybe get a charge in on my Imperial Guard if I am still there. In Magic phase, my opponent got Flux card number 2, and so got, I think, 6 dice to my 5 dice. Looks like my opponent got Know Thy Enemy off on the Dread Legionnaires, and I dispelled that. And then this is after combat. You can see my Imperial Guard did much better this time and managed to kill off, looks about 10 of the Dread Legionnaires and lost a couple in return. I actually did not want to chase. I actually wanted to restrain, and then on my turn I could charge the Hydra. But my guys once more rolled like boxcars for their leadership check, and my BSB was nowhere nearby, and so charged into the flank of the Dancers of Yema. So this is what the battlefield looks like on the right side at the end of combat. On the left side, I finally managed to kill off those last 2 Raptor Riders, and then just kind of turned to face. And this is actually, I believe, my turn 4, so I started moving my troops a little bit closer to the... Well, I charged the Halberdiers into the Repeater Auxiliary and failed the charge, and then my handguns just turned to shoot. In Magic, I got Flux card number 3, so I got 7 dice to my opponent's 5. Managed to get Word of Iron off and the Blessing of Uller off on my Imperial Guard. So I had a 5-up ward save as well as having a 3-up armor. And this is after combat. You can see I peeled off about a rank of the Dancers of Yema. And I don't think I lost too many in return because luckily I was in my opponent's flank. And my opponent actually failed their... They passed the break test, but they failed their turning, so they couldn't turn in face, so I was still stuck in the flank. So that brings us to Daughters of the Blood Moon Cult, turn 4. The Hydra countercharged into the flank of my Imperial Guard, so that was coming. You can see it has 3 wounds on it, so between magic and shooting I managed to pluck off a few wounds. The Legionnaires failed to rally and continued running. In Magic, my opponent drew Flux card number 4, and so got 7 dice to my 5 dice, and once more managed to get Know Thy Enemy off on the Dancers, and I dispelled the Crippling Fatigue. In close combat, I lost looks like 6 Imperial Guard, managed to put 1 more wound on the Hydra and kill 3 more Dancers. I think I lost combat, but luckily I did have my character still alive, so I was still steadfast, and I stood this time. So that brings us to Peter Whitestone, turn 5. So once more, I declared a charge with my Halberdiers into the Repeater Auxiliary and failed once more to get anywhere. You can see that my opponent just shot at my Halberdiers and my gunmen last turn and just killed a few. In Magic Phase, I managed to get Flux Card 4, so I had about 7 or 8 dice to my opponent's 5. Looks like I got Word of Iron off and uh, Glory for Gold off. So I charged the Hydra in the rear with my readers, hoping that they could get the brace for impact and do enough wounds to pick up that one last wound before my opponent could go. And I was successful. I did manage to kill the Hydra before it had a chance to swing, so that's great. However, in combat with the Dancers, my opponent killed all of my Imperial Guard, just leaving my Priest, who broke and fled. So that brings us to Dancers of the Blood Moon turn 5. So my opponent chased and caught my fleeing Prelate and wiped him out. And then I believe in between shooting with my Hellblaster and my pistol and my handgunners, I managed to wipe out the one unit of Dread Repeaters, Dread Auxiliaries with the Wizard, and managed to kill the Oracle as well. So this is more or less where we ended the game. We did kind of just continue what we basically said what we did for the next turn. So my Halberdiers charged the Dread Legionnaires who had again failed to rally and wiped them out. My Crossbowmen basically marched out of line of sight of my opponent's Dancers, so they couldn't do anything, and so the game ended like that. Unfortunately, my opponent never got the Mana Core into combat, and the Hydra only came in at the very end when it was already pretty injured. So that brings us to the Daughters of the Blood Moon managed to get 2,179 points off of the Peter Whitestone, and Peter Whitestone managed to get 3,020 points off the Daughters of the Blood Moon. So that's a difference of 841, and because we were not doing secondary objectives, that became a 12-8, so it is a minor victory for Peter Whitestone. Even though he did flee the field of battle, he is technically still alive, so he will return for the next Game 3. So hopefully you guys are enjoying these linked campaign-like games. Like I said, this is the second of a 5-game scenario that my opponent and I are planning. So yeah. If you guys saw any mistakes or would like to put anything in the comment section below, please point those out. If you guys would like to see anything on this channel or have any ideas, I'd be great to hear those. And as always, hit like and subscribe, and game on.